Hey yo, this is Anime Addiction 00, and I thought I was done with the summoners by now, but I guess not, since next is the Sadida, the plant summoners. So they do have their own summons, but you don't have the choices of Osamodas, but instead of just saying it here at the character creation screen, I think I should just go ahead into the game and actually get this going. I already have one right here, so let's just get in there. I'm going to try to start a little bit differently, because I think it'll work this time. You can always go into this training dummy room where you first begin, and it helps to learn all of your spells at first. But I think this will be easiest to show the interesting aspect of the Sadida with their summons. They use dolls. It's their specialty one, and it's maxed out at the moment, so it costs the least amount to summon, Wakfu points and action points. And it also has the most distance. But until I do something with them, they're just going to remain there as doll seeds, and if they happen to be attacked by an enemy, they'll just turn into sacrificial dolls and explode. And also the good thing is that if my explanations get a little too long or I can't figure out what to say, the dummy just, of course, passes turns because it's just a training dummy. So, depending on what spell you cast on them, they'll become different things. So I don't want to kill it just yet, but with most earth spells, it can turn into the block. Let's see. Wait for animation. The block is something with very high health, and it doesn't attack and it doesn't have much movement, but it usually, its job is to kind of protect you and keep the enemy close by it. And since Sadidas do have a couple spells that don't require a line of sight, you can still hide behind them and do your stuff. So let's see a different one. I don't think this one kills it. If it does, I'll just do a different one. So I use this one, an air spell, to summon a Lethargic. They specialize in movement point loss, I believe. No, they're action points. Okay, so they're slightly different. There's so many dolls and so many uses for them, I have to try and remember to keep track. What makes the Lethargic special, though, other than their base ability action point loss, is that if you teach them a spell, that's what they will cast. I'm not sure if he's close enough to do it, but you cast an air spell on them and they'll learn that spell. Unfortunately, on the description it says they'll remember it and they'll cast it until you teach them something else, but that is not the case, which I find kind of annoying because then you waste points every turn to teach them something when you could be using it yourself. But I guess if you really get up there, though, and have enough AP, you don't really have to worry about it. But after you teach it the spell, it will use it and still uses AP loss, so it can be a very annoying doll, but it doesn't have nearly as much health as the block. This one has a certain percentage of health that you have, and my dolls are probably very weak, so I haven't upgraded my health. I think this is a Lethargic. Okay, yes, it's the Lethargic. And the Ultra Powerful, I think, is the one that is the movement point loss. What's the difference then? Because this one is the Lethargic and that one does it too. Oh goodness, I probably wasn't ready for this video, but anyway. Let's just summon another doll here. And try summoning an Ultra Powerful instead of a Lethargic. Oh, maybe the Ultra Powerful is the better version that keeps the spell as soon as you cast it and just does it every turn. And it hit for a lot more damage. Why haven't I ever tried that yet? Wow, I'm such a noob. I am sorry. And since it killed it, and because I didn't think it would do that much damage, I gotta go back in. So just to keep this straight here, where's the Lethargic and the Ultra Powerful? Okay, so yeah, that's the one I got confused, and for some reason I never used it because I thought it was always the Lethargic and it just didn't work. But the Lethargic is the one that you can teach it a spell and it'll use it once, but other than that, it just runs around and takes away -1 AP, regardless of how strong it is. Because if it did any more than that, I guess it would be too overpowered. The Ultra Powerful is the one that memorizes the air spell, and it'll cast every turn until it changes with another spell. I wish I remembered that, because it would have been very helpful otherwise. And it's also very helpful if you're upgrading your air spells because it has a certain percentage of your air mastery, and it even has a certain percentage of its overall damage for your secondary damages. So I think that's about it. Actually, no, it's not. I already did the block, and then other than that is that's the one that does the movement point loss. So I only have 2 dolls left, I believe. Let's get these dolls summoned over here. Let's see, I think the ones I have left are... No, I have another one to go, actually. So I'll use that one now. And I won't use that yet, because I might accidentally hit the scarecrow dummy. So the ones you can use in the water branch are the inflatable, and he won't heal me because I'm not going to get hurt in this fight. But he runs around with about 2 movement, and he can heal you from about 2 or 3 squares away, so it's a very helpful little support doll, and it has pretty decent health because it's the defensive support one, so at least it won't die immediately, but it still goes off by how many hit points that the Sadida has overall. And it has the percentage of the Sadida's water mastery with damages, so that's helpful with it if you're upgrading your water spells. So I already did that. I did the inflatable. That's the other one I want to do. And it just gets out of the way. Or not. Oh, okay, there it goes. It was just a delay. So only 2 spells in the Earth branch will do the Mad Doll. The Earthquake you can't really rely on because it's random, but I'll get to that once I get to the Earth spells a little bit, or each elemental spell in more detail. But this one, Area Effect, that's the one that focuses in movement point loss. And that's pretty much all it does. I can do a double check right here. Yeah, it just reduces their movement points by 1 and runs away. So it's a little tiny fragile doll just like the Lethargic that does movement points instead of action points. And I think the last one, just double checking here, is the Greedy, which is the other offensive doll other than the ultra powerful. Except this one uses water damage instead of air damage. So this one can move quite a bit. It can only attack once at 3 AP. It has a certain percentage of your hit points. It uses your water mastery and 70% of your secondary damage. Blah, blah, blah. I can't talk. The best way to do it for cheap is to use the spell Vaporize on it. And what's good about it is that if you cast Vaporize on any doll, you'll put them in the controlled state, which is kind of like the Osamodas' Possession, but it's a lot cheaper and it's just a basic spell, so you don't have to level it up or anything using points. So I can move them around if I want, have them turned, or I can have them attack just yet, and that's pretty much it. I'm not sure what to do with that, like the puffle thing. I never know how to use that. Maybe it'll come up eventually, but other than that, it just attacks and it's done. So now that you've seen all of the dolls, let's see what else you can do to power up those dolls real quick. And I did mention that with the sacrificial, that if the dolls are attacked by an enemy, they'll just explode and deal damage and get closer if they can. They only have 3 movement points to do so, and they don't really do too much damage. And you might risk wasting a Wakfu point if they explode too soon. So the second active spell is the Dolly Sacrifice, which actually I could show, but I'm not sure if it's really worth a showing. So let's just go in here just in case. Back to the spell. The Dolly Sacrifice, you sacrifice your doll and you get to heal a hit point, I think. Yeah, I believe that once you sacrifice it, you use it to heal you regain some hit points depending on its level, but it doesn't trigger Explode All, which is a passive, and I'll get to that in a minute. It uses the best element to heal you. So yeah, I'll probably have to actually show it off. It does a lot of things. Alright, so let's just summon something real quick. Hopefully I'll have enough to sacrifice it. So Dolly Sacrifice doesn't have much range right now, but as you upgrade it, it will get more range, you don't need a line of sight, and it will cost way less action points. So if I use it right now, I have to get right next to it. But it won't heal me because I don't need any health, but once you use it, it creates a doll seed, and if you use it again on the doll seed, it destroys the seed, it returns your action points, whether you sacrifice the doll or the seed, and you get your Wakfu point back if you don't want to have the doll out at all, or even the seed. So at least you get your stuff returned, so if you made a mistake or you don't want them out just yet, so you can still do other things. While I'm here, I might do the second one because it actually has a link to it. This one is an interesting one, where it's more like the voodoo doll type thing, because it's called the Voodoll. You summon it on top of an enemy, which mine's very expensive because I haven't leveled it at all, but the doll links to the enemy, and any damage you do to it will now link to the enemy. And it's interesting because with certain earth spells, they actually do more damage if you do it on the Voodoll and it links, but you'll still do damage to the doll, and you could also still risk killing it. So if you really want to use the Voodoll, you might want to upgrade it so it costs a little bit less. It also has the same resistance of the target and has a certain percentage of their hit points, and they have more, of course, the more you level it, and you also have more range. And I don't think it'll show off too much against the dummy, but at the very least I can show how it links. Like for some reason on this spell, the Wild Grass, you see that it does 12 hit points on a normal enemy, but it does 15 hit point damage when you do it through the Voodoo doll. So it does, some things do a lot more damage if you link it through to the doll. As I said, it will, you do risk killing it because it still loses hit points, but you can also heal the Voodoll as well with some of the water spells. We're just going to keep entering for the last active spell, or the second to last active spell that probably just needs to be shown. Going again. And the last one is only for supportive purposes. I've tried using it all maxed out to see if it's really useful, but unfortunately to me it doesn't really seem that useful, but I could just be using it incorrectly. It's only level 1 for me, so it's very costly at 5 action points and 1 Wakfu point, but if you max it out, it only costs 1 Wakfu point. You transform into a tree for a turn, you can no longer move, and you're healed and your resistances are increased, but it doesn't really say on... Aha, there it is. Okay, so you do get a certain level of resist, but it's 0.5% resist per level of Sadida. But you automatically end the turn as well, and also per level that you already get maxed out, you get plus 3.11 hit points per remaining movement points. So the more movement you have, the more bonus you have, and it also uses your best element to heal you, so it's kind of an odd spell. But in any case, that's pretty much it. You'd end your turn, you heal, and you can't move the rest of the turn. That means you can still be attacked as well. Let's summon a doll for the next one, because that's what it uses. I don't think I'll have enough to summon it on this turn, though. So the last one is Sycamore, where you add the Nettled effect to them, which are very helpful to the only 2 offensive dolls if you want to power those up. The more you level it up, the stronger they'll become, with getting them the Nettled level up to 10, which gives them 100% water damage, 50% air damage, higher chances of removing AP and movement points, and 3 extra movement points for them to move around. So it's I think it's very strong to buff up your dolls, but of course at level 1, it's very expensive, even though it still doesn't need a line of sight. So of course when you level it up, you get more range, and you don't need a line of sight, so you can buff them up from a whole bunch of areas. And powering up your dolls is, I think is a good thing if that's what you want to do. So I'll summon the Greedy here, which is the easiest one to do. My Sycamore is only level 1, so I have to get right up close to him. And now he's a very angry doll, and he's gonna beat things up. Oh, they even make a different face, that's cute. There's not really much of a difference that I can tell because it's a very low level, but if I max it out like I intend to, because I want to keep them to see how it is, I think it could be very strong. But before getting too far, let's get to the passives. The Explode All is what you get that to power up your dolls a little bit so they can cause a little bit more grief even if they are dying very easily because you didn't put much health into them or something, like I did. So when they die, they actually explode, and there's a certain percentage or point damage of health using your best element, and even when they explode to hurt enemies around them, and they also heal allies, so it's not going to be very bad for you if you're close by or any party members in your fight, so that's good. The doll link is mostly around the Voodoll, so it kind of has its own play style in a way because it takes all these points to make it completely different and useful in its own way, I suppose. But this one is if your Voodoll is out, transfers 10% of the damage that you take to the Voodoll, so it can also be a protective tank if they're trying to get around the doll and just kill you instead. Knowledge of dolls, which I maxed because I do want to make these dolls helpful. It's pretty much just a passive spell that increases your overall control. You get more percentage of health bonus to the Voodoll, which isn't helpful for me right now because I'm not using it, since it's only for one target at a time. But maxed out, you do get a 100% chance to get one Wakfu point back when a doll dies, which is very helpful because the offensive ones are so squishy they usually die in one hit around the enemies I'm at right now. And I sometimes don't always get a chance to heal them, so at least I get my points back so I can keep summoning more. And also you get 2 controls so you can control more dollies. The green guard is also helpful for the Nettled effect, but doesn't take any points because it's passive. So it's pretty much like the animal guard for the Osamodas. If you level it up, the dolls will have a chance to get Nettled at a certain percentage depending what level it is. So for example, if you max it up to level 20, they have a 40% chance of applying Nettled if you're attacked by anything. And of course, the higher level it is, the more powerful it is. Up to level 20, they go up to level 10, so if you're attacked, you don't have to cast anything on them, and they'll just get angry and try to attack them even harder. And the Wakfu Sadida is a passive that's for ones that don't really want to use the dolls. I kind of find it hard to imagine to not use them, though. But in any case, maybe you can use the Healy one, and then just fight on your own. Because this one, you have a bigger bonus the more you level it up if you don't use dolls and they're not next to you in any way. You don't get a penalty if you don't use them, you just don't get any bonuses. Like if it's max level, you get 30% extra damage, but you don't get any, the bonuses if they're like within 4 cells of you. At level 1, you get 1% damage, but still 1% damage at both, so you don't really get too much with that. So either way, it's good if you don't really want to use the dolls and you want to pack a little bit more punch. So actually, I should go find a real fight and show off the rest of the elemental spell, so I will be back. And back. I was going to go to a nation to try and get a little tougher fights, but I think I can still show off the spells maybe in a little bit more quicker manner if I just stay in Astrub and defeat or hit Peewees. But in any case, to the elemental spells, giving them more detail or whatnot, I'm going to start with the Water branch that you've seen a little bit of. Vaporize is a fairly decent spell with 4 range. Very cheap, but also very weak. So if your water damage is high, you can just keep casting it and do a decent amount of damage. Next one I can't do because it costs a bit much, but I'll do the one after that. The Mud Doll, it can be a heal or a hurting spell. It's moderate cost at 3 AP and has pretty decent range as well. You can also use it to heal the Voodoll, as it says down here. And I think it heals extra on the Voodoll, actually, so that's good. You can use it to heal your Voodoll if it's taking too much of a beating, and that's also the one you use to summon a Greedy. The next one, yeah, you can do it, summon the Greedy. Okay, so the Sadida's tier doesn't have too much range, but it doesn't need a line of sight. It's very costly at 5 AP, and it can also summon an inflatable, and you can use it on an ally to heal them. Let's just wait for that to happen. I won't cast it on the bird just yet, because I think it might possibly kill it. I'm not sure. So, Rust has a decent area of effect because it goes into a plus sign. You can use it to damage all enemies in that area, and any dolls that happen to be in there, kind of like the Oza, will get a bonus in damage. Unfortunately, the effect doesn't show if I don't cast it on anything, so that was probably dumb. You can also use it to summon the Greedy, and the higher level you have it, the more rust you can put on the doll, and they get extra 20. They get to, let's see, they get up to 300% damage if it happens to be level 300. Right now I'm only at like 26% damage, but it's specifically water damage, so it's only helpful for the greedy doll. The next one is interesting because it doesn't need a line of sight, has good range, but you can't cast it in any other area other than it lets you, so at least you can't accidentally misclick. I hate when I misclick and I waste it. But this one, you cast it on an enemy and any ally standing on the 4 areas surrounding it and those 4 other squares, they'll get healed for the amount, depending on how much damage you do to it, I think, or depending on your heal bonus. You can also use it to summon the healing doll. But this is a very helpful healing spell because you don't need a line of sight, it damages the enemy and can even heal area of effect. So I just think it's handy anyway. I've used it quite a lot. Okay, let's just get some more birdies here. Hopefully it won't take too long for them to come. Planting some birds. Oh. Okay, there we go. Get this one. Okay, so the next one is the air branch. Probably it seems like the strongest branch. And the first spell you learn is Woodland Stench. It costs 3 AP and 1 movement point, has pretty decent range. You can even cast it to the enemies that are next to you if they're giving you a pain in the butt. If someone's a Lethargic, you can only have 2 uses per target, and it gives them Intoxicated, and the level of it depends on how strong it is. Intoxicated means that they'll lose hit points at the start of their turn. So yeah, I haven't even powered up air spells, and for some reason it's the strongest spell I have. So I feel like maybe I should have went air. In any case, next one is very handy. It's very weak at Poisoned Wind. Sorry, that's the name of it. It's very weak, dealing little damage, but the poison is different from the Woodland Stench, and stacking them can be pretty deadly. The Poison Wind also has slightly less range, but it's very good because it's cheap at 2 AP. Oops, you cast it on something, and unlike at the start of their turn, they'll lose health depending on how much AP and movement points they use. So if they move around and try to damage you, they're going to be taking damage too. Like that one yeah, he died because he moved away too far under the influence of the poison, and so did that one. So yeah, I think it's a very helpful spell. Sun Shield is kind of hard to cast because it has a very limited range in a diamond shape around you or some sort, whatever. I don't feel like thinking about it much right now. Don't really feel very good today. Anyway, Sun Shield is fairly strong-ish. It's decent mostly because it can reduce their resistance. So if you have your ultra powerful keep using it against things, it's just gonna be it's gonna be a little bit easier to hit things for better damage. But it's kind of costly at 4 AP, and like I said, it's very difficult to cast, but I don't think you need a line of sight. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's what the no line of sight. And the K-Mirror, this one can also intoxicate. It's not too strong, but it can be very handy to make them go under the influence of Poisoned Wind more, because you cast that, then you use that, and they can't lock you anymore, so you can just drag them along with you, and then cause them to lose health and die, like that. So it's a very interesting spell, and it's more interesting because they can't lock you anymore, so you can use it as an escape or to position yourself the way you want. And since Poisoned Wind is a very cheap cost, you can probably use that early on with the K-Mirror, so you can drag them along and lose extra health. Okay, I am on the Earth Branch now. So let's just get some more poor birds here for these experiments. Now that I have the volume up so loud so that you can make sure to hear it, some of the music on here is so pretty. Just saying. Alright, I probably will need the Earth Branch here because they're not close to me at all. So the first spell, that's pretty strong, but kind of costly at 4 AP, so you can't really double cast it early on. The good thing is that it always takes away 1 max movement point, and I have seen it stack, so you can get rid of 2, I believe. You can summon it through the Voodoll, I believe so. Or you give them hyper movement, or you can summon the block like I showed before. Oh, that's awesome! And also when you get a critical hit, as you see, you actually get a different animation, which I think is really awesome. So yeah, the Bramble is a very useful earth spell, at least in my opinion, because you can make things not come near you as quickly. So the Earth Branch has a lot of movement point affecting moves. For example, Fertilizer doesn't have as much range, and you can only do it in a line, but if you cast it on yourself or an ally, you can give them... Oh, that's also another thing. Bramble you can cast on yourself to give yourself armor, which kind of damages the enemy a little bit, and it protects you from some of the damage, not too much, but it can. And you cast this on an enemy to steal movement points away from them, but of course that's only if you don't insta-kill them. Which did happen, so I only got the 3. But if it worked like it's supposed to, I would have gotten 4. The next thing is Wild Grass. This one also gives you Armor to Be, which is the temporary armor. Brambly armor isn't very strong, as I said, but probably as you level it more, mostly with Bramble and Wild Grass, it does help protect you a little bit. You can only cast it twice per turn because it's very cheap at 3 AP and 1 movement point. And also that's the one that's a lot stronger if you cast it through the Voodoll. Hit that one. The next one, Earthquake, has very good range, but it's very difficult to use effectively. It's very cheap at 1 movement point. You have 5 uses per turn, which seems very generous, but it hits randomly in the area it kind of highlights. That was lucky. That usually never hits, and it was a critical. Usually it's always anywhere else. But anyway, that's how it works. You can use it if you feel lucky or want to risk it and getting enemies in a very wide area if they're grouped around you. That's usually when it does seem to work. Anyway, the next one, Manifold Bramble. This one works 2 different ways. If I cast it when there's no enemies nearby or enemies in the targeted area, they have a percentage chance to lose 1 movement point. So any enemy that comes in there, I can try to make sure they don't come near me. And since I still have enough AP because it returns 2 AP to use if you cast it on an empty cell, I can use it to damage them as well. It's a very good area of effect for earth damage also if they're all grouped up. So I think I took care of all the basic spells. As you can probably tell, I'm not very sure with the Sadida or the Summoner, but I've tried playing them up to almost level 40, so hopefully I have some kind of advices or such to offer. Depending if you want to use the dolls or not, it could depend on what elements you want to use or resistances, or if you want heals received better because you want to summon the inflatable doll to heal you along the way, or if you want power, you can maybe get lifesteal, but mostly it seems like you would want to get a lot of hit points to power up your dolls in general so they don't die too quickly, because they take a percentage of your hit points to calculate their own. So I would say maybe hit points are very handy. I always get regeneration when I start out anyway, because I think it helps me survive a little bit better, because I'm doing all these classes I'm not used to playing. In any case, I think hit points are always good for anything. Just about everything else is situational. Elements, of course, depends what you want to do. I put in all water damage because I thought the greedy was the only thing I was going to do for offense, but air is also a very good branch to go into because they're fairly strong spells, and the ultra powerful is a very strong doll. You could, if you wanted to, put some earth damage in there, but they're pretty strong on their own, and they're also very defensive. And speaking of that, if you want to be more defensive, it wouldn't hurt to maybe get some resistances and health points, because then you might be harder to touch with your Brambly armors. As for this, I'm not too sure. I think some dolls use a percentage of your dodge, so it might be good to put some dodge in there, but I always get initiative for a while because I'm tired of going last, even with monsters. So at the very least, I think that's pretty much the only thing I can suggest, unless the block uses some of your locking. Does he? I should probably check that. No, he doesn't say he actually uses it. He just gets more lock depending on how strong he is, and the dolls get stronger depending on the spell you use on them, so you should probably use your best elemental spell to summon them. At least I think that's how it works. It doesn't really say or look it otherwise. For the chance branch, if you want to power up your own heals, your heal spells, your water heals, you could power up your heals here, which I did a little bit. Critical hits I think are fun for the Sadida just because they have that special animation with the bramble. I wish a whole bunch of other classes had that, but now it seems kind of special, I suppose. You could just, get a whole bunch of critical hits so you can get more critical hits, but it doesn't say that your summons get your critical hits as well, like the Osamodas does. So I'm not sure if you'd want to crank it up to increase your dolls as well. If you want more defense, maybe block is good. Critical damage is good, of course, for offense, but yeah, mostly still depends. The major was very difficult because I was very tempted to do +2 control and 40% damage, because it helps me overall and it helps the dolls overall, and so I can handle more things, but I ended up going with the action points because early on, if you get the full set of gobble armor around level 32 or 30 or so, you'll be having 8 action points if you get this bonus, and that means I can cast a 4 AP spell twice in a turn, which is pretty strong. So yeah, that's pretty much what I can lightly suggest for it. They're a pretty fun plant summoner. I do like the Osamodas a little bit better just because you get to choose, but their dolls are pretty neat, and they do have lots of options for support and heals and offense and even defense. So anyway, I hope I went through it decently enough. I tried playing it a lot, and the next ones are sure going to be fun. I can't understand them as much as I can throw them, which I can't throw them because they're not here. So it might take me a bit for the next one. Well, anyway guys, bye!